Welcome to Sacred Rite, the podcast where we explore holistic living, the wisdom of ancestral traditions, and the path to deepening our connection with ourselves, one another, and the earth. Together, we will embrace wellness in all its forms and rediscover the sacred callings that guide us home. I'm your host, Amber Young, and today we're stepping into a conversation that's been waiting patiently at the back of our closets, woven into our skin, and whispered through every stitch we've ever worn. This is episode 5, Adorning Ourselves with Care, a conversation on conscious clothing, and I'm joined by the luminous Sparrow, the visionary maker behind Sparrow Clothing Company, a brand rooted in the sacred art of slow fashion, handcraft, and organic soul-infused textiles. In a world where fast fashion leaves behind ecological devastation, exploitative labor, and a deep spiritual disconnection, Sparrow invites us to remember the medicine in our garments, the stories they hold, the energy they carry, the way clothing can become a ritual of care, a form of resistance, and a path back to the earth. We'll talk about the origins of her work, the spiritual meaning of making by hand, and what it means to wear clothes that align with our values, not just our wardrobes and not just what's trendy. From fabric to frequency, from a cultural lapse in memory to cultural repair. This episode is a strong call to come back to what's real, rooted, and radiant. So whether you're mending an old favorite or dreaming of a more intentional wardrobe, this one's for you. Let's begin. Hi, Sparrow.
Hey, Amber. How's it going?
It's going so good. I'm so happy to have you on Sacred Rite Podcast. You're just the perfect guest for me. And I'm just looking forward to our conversation because I'm so passionate about the topic that we're going over today, which is slow fashion. And we're going to dive into stuff about fast fashion. But you are somebody who just designs the most beautiful clothing. And you know, I support your company. I have quite a few of your pieces that I just love wearing. And I'm sure listeners are very curious about this question, but tell us the story behind Sparrow Clothing Company and what inspired you to start creating handmade organic clothing.
Yay. Wow, that's such a big question because Sparrow Co. has been within my soul for probably my whole life. And it's been something I've always envisioned doing because I've, from a young age been so passionate about clothing and fashion and, adorning myself in ways that were unique. I'm an Aquarius, so that's where that stems from.
I'm thinking this is so funny because I'm an Aquarius too. Okay. I don't know if you knew that, but I'm an Aquarius too. And because we like to be unique, I feel like the clothing is just something so a huge part of that.
No, it's so true. And, I grew up in a small town in Maine and all we had were just the typical stores. All we had was American Eagle and Abercrombie and those typical stores. And I just saw everyone wearing the same things. And I just had this innermost desire to express myself in a different way. So from a young age, I just started messing around with fabric and making clothing and this and that just so I could express myself. And, that just continued to evolve as I grew up. And fashion has always been something that has just been a reflection of where I'm at in my life. So, I went on and studied textile and apparel a little bit in college. I studied abroad in Italy, which was incredible. And so I actually got to learn a little bit more about fashion there. And then I actually took an internship at a style magazine in New York. So I worked in style there. And then I opened up a little vintage store in New York with my old coworker, which was really fun. And then after that, I realized I wanted to leave the city and a lot of what I knew behind to sort of travel the world and open my eyes up to new experiences. And, from that place, Sparrow Co. started to evolve and started to become what it is today. I initially started the brand, through traveling and working with different artisans as a way to connect deeper with the cultures. So that's where our hats come from. I was living in Guatemala one year and needed a sun hat and asked a small collective of women, it was like, can you guys make this idea for me? And they executed it amazing. So I've had these partnerships just through traveling and just as a way to connect deeper with the cultures and learning the language. And it just felt like this amazing way to dive deeper into the places I was living at the time. And so fast forward a few more years, I really wanted to learn more about sewing and making clothing myself because for a long time I was sort of relying on different artisans to make things for me. But my true passion and desire was to just design from the imagination that was stirring within my soul. So I was really seeking out a teacher for that. And that's how I cosmically got connected to my amazing mentor and teacher, Jean, who I try to mention as much as I can because she really was the roots and the foundation of Sparrow Co. and helping me to take these ideas within my brain and actually creating them. She was the creator of flax. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's this pretty iconic linen brand. And she was the pioneer of natural fibers way back when. She was so ahead of her time and knew that plastic was bad to wear. It was all about natural clothing. So she started this clothing brand called Flax that was an all linen clothing brand. And it completely took off because she was just so ahead of her time. And was her main intention was just trying to get, natural fibers on the people. So she was an incredible mentor for me. I went and studied with her in Hawaii on her property there and learned to sew, learned how to design, learned how to make patterns, and just soaked up the wellness of what she had to teach me. And, after I left her farm, I moved to my home in California, and that's when the pandemic hit. So instead of being somebody that wanted to move about the world learning and collaborating with people outside of me, I really took this wealth of information and rooted myself in and started creating Sparrow Co. clothing out of my own studio. And yeah, that was a really exciting and fulfilling part of the journey. I created an online store and bought myself 2 sewing machines with the what was it? Those stimulus checks we got
Oh,
from the
nice.
pandemic. Yeah. I basically got those 2 checks. And the first one I bought my really nice straight stitch sewing machine. And then the second one I bought my industrial serger. And I just gifted myself the opportunity to make clothing. And I started there from a really humble place in my studio. And in that place, it was just a reflection of where I was in that way. It was just, creating my visions coming to life and creating what was really important to me was creating with materials that were organic and soft and comfortable, and also creating a palette of colors that was reflective of the earth and the earth's beauty. So yeah, from that humble start, it sort of just continued to grow. And now we work with other factories. I mean, I wouldn't call them factories. I call them just small little production houses in California. Yeah, just to help with the inventory. I also work with a couple local seamstresses in my area. It sort of just evolved from there. But it's kind of a long-winded response because, yeah, it's just been a life journey and it's just continued to be a reflection of who I am and where I'm at and what I believe in the moment.
I love that. And I so adore your company and your vision and your styles. They really hold nicely on so many different body types and the colorways. So you guys use plant dyes, right?
So we started out using only natural plant dyes, which is so beautiful because you can really get those gorgeous colors. But I've actually evolved into using also low impact fiber reactive dyes for a couple of reasons. One of them was just because with the fabric that I use, a lot of times the plant dyes wash out after a couple of wears. And my vision is I really want to create clothing that has that longevity. So people can, get them dirty and be a mother and wipe their hands on them and, wear them in the garden and not be afraid to throw them in the washer and dryer. That's really the kind of clothing I want to make right now. But the low impact dyes are amazing because even though they are a synthetic dye, it's not derived from plants, it does bond 99% to the fiber. So that means that it doesn't wash off. It doesn't leach into the earth. And when you wash and dry it, the color will not leach from the fiber. It's completely bonded to that fiber forever. So yeah, I've become to really enjoy using those just because it really helps with the longevity of the wear and tear of clothing.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So low impact dyes, and are they less full of chemicals? Like, what is a low impact dye?
How it's working is that I'm dyeing at such a small amount that the way I do it, the dyes are able to basically like completely absorb. So it's not derived from plants. It's just a dye that's able to like completely absorb into the fiber. So
Yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
It can
Yeah.
hold versus just being washed out and yeah, because you really want to the colors that you're creating are so beautiful. You really want to hold those colors. And I've had some of my natural dyed clothes have lightened up or have lost their color or oops, I spilt oil on it and I had to like try to get the oil stain out. I used soap and that soap took out the coloring. So I've had that happen to some pieces. So I love that you're using something that's low impact and able to hold because then these pieces will last longer. They're more so these heirloom pieces that you can pass on. I could pass my clothes to my daughter if they're still holding. There's a lot of clothes that don't hold well. And then what do you do, you know?
Well, see, there are certain fibers that are better for natural dyeing, and I would say that would be more like a raw silk. All kinds of silk take dye really well. So if I'm ever creating a silk item, I would totally do a natural dye because that silk, the animal protein fibers, wool as well, it just like absorbs the dye so much better versus a hemp or a cotton or a terry cloth. Those fibers are a little heavier and the way that they are woven together just don't hold that natural dye as well. So yeah, they're definitely a lot more temperamental to if you are wearing a hemp cotton or something like that that is naturally dyed, it's just going to be a lot more reactive to your surroundings. Like if you spill a little yogurt or a little bit of lemon on it or something, it'll permanently change colors. It'll also shift colors in the sunlight. You just have to be a little bit more precious with the clothing that you're wearing, which is totally beautiful for ceremonial clothes or really special garments. But I just think as someone who's trying to make clothing that's just on the day-to-day wear and tear, it's just not very practical, especially if somebody's spending a lot of money on that kind of clothing as is. You really want it to be durable and last the test of time.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I have a lot of pieces that are super special that I don't wear that much. Why am I holding on to all these clothes that I'm not choosing to wear on my day to day because I don't want to ruin it? Especially being a mother and chasing a toddler around who has sticky hands, where I'm like, whoa, girl, watch your hands. All the time, I'm like, watch those hands. She's really good about making sure her hands are clean. Her father and I have been pretty on her about clean hands and making sure we wipe them and we don't touch all the things in our clothes.
Yeah, totally. I'm right there with you.
I'm curious, what is one of your favorite natural dyes? What do you like to work with or which ones you could do multiple to?
Gosh, that's such a hard question because I love so many different plants to work with. I really love working with a plant called kutch, which is very rich in tannins. So it's actually from like the bark of a tree. And it's just so rich in tannins that it really bonds so well with the fiber, just giving you these just gorgeous caramel colors. And also what I love about working with kutch is you can modify it. You can modify it with soda ash. You can modify it with an iron bath and create these really deep grays or these gorgeous, rich terracottas. So I really love working with kutch for that reason. I also really love working with marigolds, which I'm sure you're familiar with, obviously. But that's just such a common plant And it's such an easy plant to find in abundance. And it just gives this absolutely gorgeous golden yellow color that's so bright and vibrant and also holds really well to fibers. Every year I go to my flower farm and we always do like a trade or something. And they let me take a huge basket of marigolds and I string them up. It's always right around Halloween. I always string them up and put them all around my house. So there's just tons of marigolds everywhere. It's so fun. And then they dry out and then I keep them in my studio until the spring, until like around this time. And then I use them to dye something special with because they just give this like absolutely gorgeous color. Like it's like the sunshine in a lot of ways.
It really
I
does
love
hold
it.
that energy.
Hmm.
Marigolds, just a happy flower. I'm growing some.
Hmm.
I have some of my marigold starts in my basement
Oh,
right now,
nice.
ready to
Yes,
put
get them
on
out
the
there.
edges of my garden. They're really good at combating pests, as you might know.
Yeah, they're awesome. I need to plant some too. I have been slacking.
It's garden season.
I know. I was just out there this morning.
This
Get my
morning,
seeds
this is
going.
just an odd side comment, but this morning we had a hummingbird stuck in one of our little hoop houses. And I
Oh
went out on
no.
the porch and I was like, oh my gosh, I could see this little fluttering hummingbird inside. And just opened it up and got it out. But I was like, how did it get in there? It's pretty wild. There's just a small opening on the backside. So it must have just flown perfectly under. But I also took that
Wow.
as a sign, a beautiful sign, because
Yes.
hummingbirds are such sweet medicine and really just amazing creatures of the earth. And I have a little hummingbird on my Sacred Rite podcast cover image.
Mm.
And so I was just thinking about that, like just the connection. Then I heard the eagles. It was just a really beautiful morning.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Okay, so I'm wondering, so you started out, your journey is so unique where you started literally like studying fashion in Italy, which was probably really amazing as a young person. Probably really cool. You probably learned so much because European fashion so vastly different from the fashion here in the States and just all around the world. So it just really gave you this global lens. And then hearing your story unfold, it just sounded like you were on the path from the jump from when you were really young and then just kind of naturally started gravitating towards that more slow fashion. What does slow fashion mean to you personally and spiritually?
Yeah, I think slow fashion was something that came into my life a little bit later, like just over the past 5 or 6 years, probably. Because before then, I was more excited about style and, looking a certain way and adorning myself with just what looked cool. But as I've gotten older, what I'm learning is I want to wear stuff that feels good too, not just looking a certain way, but really just feels a certain way. Because I think just through medicine work and my own spiritual journeys, I've become more sensitive and attuned to the earth and the energetics of things. So that hugely connects to what we adorn our bodies with as well. So slow fashion in my mind is, clothing that was made with consideration to the planet and earth. And I just don't really see any other way, especially as somebody that's just gone deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole in this industry. Making clothing with consideration to the earth is the only way that we should be making clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can feel it. I can feel when a garment was made with consideration to the earth. I can feel the energetic of that. And in turn, it makes me feel better when I adorn my body with that. It makes me feel like the person I want to be and the person I want to show up as in the world. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where I stand in terms of slow fashion and how I feel about it spiritually and in my own way. Yeah.
It's really beautiful. I have such similar sentiments. I started about a decade ago transitioning my closet and being more mindful because when I grew up, I was really into fashion too. My mom, she had a really good eye for picking clothing when I was young. And she used to hand make my sister and I's clothes with her sewing machine, but she had quite the eye. And so we were always very stylish kids. And so I feel like
Hmm.
that just kind of carried on with me. And I got to middle school and high school, I started picking out my own clothes. And I always more so liked Nordstrom, but obviously there's a lot of fast fashion, like that's full of fast fashion, Nordstrom, but really liked that. My sister liked more so those bigger, like Abercrombie and that sort of thing, but I never felt called to that clothing. I just kind of like to pick some certain pieces. My mom and I really just enjoyed Nordstrom. And my sisters are really into fashion too, or when we were growing up, we just all had a passion for clothes. I have two sisters. My oldest sister like had an insane amount of clothing in her room, just filled up the whole thing. And we all had different styles. But yeah, I think that just carried on with me. But when I got a little older, when I'm in college and I don't have a lot of money, I'm like
Yeah.
buying Forever 21, like cheap,
Mhm.
stylish, quote unquote, stylish things that I'm thinking look really good. But then thinking back, I'm like, wow, it didn't feel good. I like even think about the feel of the jeans,
Mhm.
like uncomfortable, but you're just trying to be stylish. So that was me for a while. And when I was probably around, it was probably a decade ago. So I'm 34 now. So when I was like 24, I started really waking up to
Mhm.
fibers and
Mhm.
fast fashion issues and like just what's going on in the fashion industry. Like
Mhm.
literal slave labor going
Mhm.
on, and you can feel that energy in clothing. It's like you said, when you start becoming more attuned to natural fibers, slow made garments with love and tender care and tender time versus whipping out these clothes very fast, and it holds this static energy, and it quite literally does hold a static energy because those clothes are made with synthetic fibers, which are made from plastic. So plastic holds a static energy. So you can feel
Mhm.
that when you're more attuned. And so, yeah, for me, I was just like, I need to start transitioning my closet. And that takes
Mhm.
time too, because with every piece that you buy, when you're supporting more slow fashion companies or businesses and that model and natural fibers, the clothing is more expensive because the time it takes, it doesn't have the price point of fast fashion. I think that's why so many people support fast fashion is they don't realize, and they're just getting cheap clothing that is quote unquote maybe stylish, following trends, but not really realizing the impact to the earth and the impact to humanity. It's
Mhm.
just really sad. So, anyways, I'm transitioning my closet and it's taken me still, like, I still find like a random piece that has polyester in it. And I'm like, oh, got to get rid of this. But it's taken me a long time. I'm finally at this place where I can say, like, most every piece of mine, minus a couple Indigo Luna pieces that have recycled polyester, is all natural fibered clothing. And a lot of my clothing is like literally from the seamstress that has the company, like you, like yourself. And
Mhm.
that feels really good energetically and literally. And I really attribute this to the vibration of the clothing. Everywhere I go, people ask me what I'm wearing. What are you wearing? Like, that is my most asked question. Where do you get your clothes? And that's either from my friends or random strangers on the street or wherever. That is my most asked question next to how do you get your hair so long? But like, that is the question I'm asked the most. And as an Aquarius, I've really had to learn my shadow side too, because as an Aquarius, as you know, since we like to be unique, I'm like, well, I can't just tell everyone because people will literally buy the same thing. I'm like, I'm not trying to wear the same thing as everybody around me. That's my Aquarius shadow side nature where I'm like, oh, but now I'm in this place where I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, these are my favorite companies and it's so important to support them. And it doesn't matter if people are wearing, your friends are wearing the same clothes, like they're asking because they're interested and because they're attracted to the vibration of the clothing. Like, it's not
Mhm.
me because it's not me being stylish. It's like literally the clothing calling people into that question. And so it really has put me in this place of like being able to share, oh, these organic companies, this organic clothing, this slow made fashion, these smaller companies versus supporting these really big companies that are really toxic for the earth. So, anyways, I have similar stories to you on fashion.
Yeah, it's huge.
Huge. Would you like to share some of maybe the impacts that you know of about fast fashion?
Oh my gosh, Amber. I could talk to you about this for like 5 days. It's insane, really. And it's something that it's almost hard for me to look at it because it's so painful. And the depth of it is so deeply woven into our culture. It's like a sickness almost. That's just so deep within our population and our humanity. And what really hurts me the most is that this sickness of us as humans and our desire to consume and to put on this appearance and this be a certain way, it's leaching into the earth and hurting our earth in such a horrific ways. So even just to like scratch the surface, just something that we might not think about a lot with fast fashion is just how are we even going to get this amount of fabric to make the number of garments that fast fashion companies put out every day? Like where's all this fabric even coming from? And the truth of the matter is, it's just, I mean, even if it is from cotton, which a lot of it is plastic, but let's just say that some of it is cotton. None of this cotton is grown in a good way. And this cotton is grown with GMO seeds. It's grown with tons and tons and tons of pesticides, like horrific amounts of pesticides. It's making the people who work the field sick. It's causing birth defects and mental illness in children. And it's like literally like hurting our earth so that the earth is not regenerating in the way that it should or needs to be a healthy piece of land and a fertile piece of soil. So just that on the surface level itself is such a big issue when it comes to fast fashion, is just the sourcing of materials and just like the demands that it puts on farmers to create and produce in a way that's harmful to the earth. And I mean, beyond that, we can just look at too, just the humanity side of it of, how are we able to make clothing this fast and this cheap? And that comes down to big factories in really poor countries paying their workers the absolute bare minimum. And 85% of these workers are women, and have children and are just trying to support their family and their children. And yeah, they're working in these less than ideal situations. They don't have voices, they don't have rights. And I mean, what is this in the name of? It's in the name of making a shirt for $5 so that you can just buy it, not think about it, maybe wear it for a couple days and, toss it away. I mean, that's just the surface of it. I mean, you can think, even deeper into it. It's just that fast fashion is creating clothing to be a consumable. So just as we, consume food, fast fashion makes clothing accessible to the point of being a consumable. Like a lot of times they focus on very trendy designs or colors or shapes that might go out of style very fast, but in the moment they're trendy. So we want to look a certain way. We want to consume the trend at a price point that most people can afford. And then we want to dispose of that trend. And it's not something that sticks in our closet. It's something that just, it's a flittering moment in the age of technology. And the real sad part is what happens to all this clothing that gets discarded. Where does it all go? And gosh, it's just crazy. I mean, most people think that I'm responsible. I donate my clothing to the thrift stores, or, I might be doing this, but I bring it to Goodwill afterwards, or this and that. But the reality is that only 10% of the clothing in the thrift stores actually sells. The 90% rest of it, and this isn't even including the clothing that just gets straight up thrown away, which is huge, like ungodly amounts of clothing. But the 90% that doesn't get sold in the thrift store just gets shipped off to other countries to deal with, and so these other countries are just receiving America's byproduct of fast fashion, and they're just overloaded with all this clothing, just tons and tons of it, and it's ending up in the landfills. And most of the clothing that we're discarding, I know I mentioned that some of it's is made with cotton, and that's true, but most of it is made with plastic, polyester. So the plastic and polyester clothing just doesn't really break down if you think about it. Plastic doesn't biodegrade. I mean, and if it does, it takes a really, really, really long time, like 200 years or something. So this clothing is just sitting in landfills and piling up and piling up and piling up. And it's horrific. It's horrific. And, it just goes to show it's not just one thing. Like when you think of fast fashion, it's like, oh, fast fashion is H&M or, just throwing off a couple of these brands on the top of my head. But it's like so much deeper than that. There's so many layers to it. And there's so much sickness within each of the layers that is, I think, and sadly, it seems that it's only really getting stronger, and it seems like there's only really more demand for it, which is really sad for my heart to take in. And that's why it's sometimes hard for me to like fully look at the big picture of really what's going on in a lot of ways. But it's important that we talk about it and do look at it so that we can, at least on a personal level, vote with our own dollars and, try to vote with our own personal change, and try to change the sickness on a personal level, and talking about it as much as we can on a bigger level so that more people wake up to it.
So important. Yeah, I read that over 92 million tons of textile waste are produced each year globally, and that's a garbage truck full every second.
Yeah.
And that's just textile waste.
It's the second biggest pollute or disposable.
Polluter.
Yeah.
In oil and gas.
Yeah. Yes. Which is crazy.
It's insane.
To really take that in. It's like, what? How is that possible? But it's true. It's crazy.
And just like the water use too, like because they're pumping out all this, just say like, let's go back to cotton. Maybe they're growing cotton and they're pumping it out. Well, it takes like a lot of water to even just to grow enough for one cotton t-shirt. And I read a statistic that said it's enough water for one person to drink for 2.5 years. So like that is a huge environmental cost. I mean, these things, these are really drastic numbers. And like even the microplastics leaching into our water systems from the synthetic clothes like polyester and nylon and all that stuff. Like there is so many little microplastics going into our ocean every year. They're so small, and it's coming off, right? You're laundering your clothing, and then it's going, wherever water goes, dependent where you live, right? Whether it's going into a well system or a water treatment facility. But like, these fibers are essentially getting out into the ocean. And then of course, all the implications of that, right? Like the sea life ingesting these microplastics and then us ingesting these microplastics from the sea life. Like it is a huge polluter. And that's just talking about the microplastic pollution of supporting fast fashion companies. Like the well is really deep here, and the environmental costs are huge, and the social and ethical issues behind it all are crazy. Like you're talking about these workers at these factories just trying to make a living and support their family and getting paid next to nothing. There are some companies where the seamstresses, they get paid per garment. And so that's why fast fashion is the thing. They're trying to make it as fast as possible so they can make the most pay. So there's a lot of these workers like literally sleeping in the factories or even living, barely going home, but like sleeping, living in these factories. And these factories provide food, right? Or like they can buy the food. So then they never leave. They're just always there producing all these clothing. And it's just really sad. And I heard that the owner of Shein, that really bad fast fashion company, like people can get their items really cheap online and whatnot, but he's one of the richest men in the world because it's become this commodity, like clothing, right? It's like people are just over consuming. And so you're right, the sickness is really running deep. And so we really have to take a look at that. I mean, sometimes I even have to take a look at like, do I really need this other piece? And it's not even fast fashion. It might be slow fashion. And I'm like, do I really need to keep adding to my closet? Do I really need it or do I want it? So I have to even see that within myself, just wanting to adorn myself with something new. But if I am, it's supporting makers like you and other really incredible clothing makers out there, because there are clothing companies creating fashionable items in a really good way. And yeah, it's just about, I feel like the accessibility piece is so deep because there's so many people who are living in poverty and they might not be able to afford these pieces. And so the unfortunate thing is like when we look at government and like farming, agriculture, it's like the subsidies that given. And I mean, it's a huge issue. But all that to say, it's like it's supporting this fast fashion, harming the earth, harming our bodies. Like polyester is the microplastics are leaching into our bodies and they're full of endocrine disruptors. So it's not even just about the environment and the workers and like the pollution. It's like literally when you put on these items, they're leaching into your body because your skin is such a huge organ. It's taking things in. So it's taking that static energy and it's taking those microplastics, and people are having all sorts of issues, right? Like this is one small factor and this Mod Podge of these other factors, but like a factor in, I believe, the rise of infertility, I feel like it's very connected to clothing that people are wearing. And that's one factor. There's many more factors in our current modern day, but it's a factor we really need to look at.
Hugely.
Yeah.
And we're so blind to it. I'll bring this back to Jean because my teacher in Hawaii, if you show up on her land wearing plastic, she doesn't allow that. And she brings so much awareness to everybody with what they're wearing. And even if somebody couldn't afford to buy non-plastic clothing, she would literally go to the thrift store and buy them all a whole new cotton wardrobe just so they could wear natural fiber clothing. But I just think that so many of us, and I will totally point the finger at myself included, for so many years, just totally unaware of the amount of plastic or even what plastic is called. Like when you look at a tag and you see the word acrylic, that doesn't immediately transfer to my brain like, oh, this is made out of plastic, So just educating in that way to what synthetic fibers are called and recognizing them and just becoming into a practice of checking tags, straight up when I'm shopping. Okay, what's in this right now? What am I actually going to put in my body? Like, let's just get in the practice of checking the tag before we buy it and making it a practice, maybe even just to say, okay, I'm not going to buy this kind of fiber anymore. I'm going to prioritize buying natural fibers from now on. And it doesn't have to be this inaccessible thing. There's so much opportunity to go and to the local thrift store and find amazing natural fiber clothing that is very inexpensive. And if that's just a very humble starting place, that's an amazing place to start from. Even if it's just a beginning practice of, I want to check the tags and start just looking for things that and feeling what those things kind of feel like, if this is just a beginning step for you. And then eventually, once there are resources there, investing in one or two really nicely made organic clothing pieces that make you feel beautiful and really are special to you. But that doesn't have to be the starting place. And I feel like that's a big barrier that deters people from wanting to revamp their wardrobe to be, more like natural fibers. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like this daunting thing. Like it can be a slow process and it's accessible if you just start at your thrift store and just, make those beginning steps, or even just switch your awareness to even start considering what natural fiber feels like and checking the tags.
Absolutely. So important. I always at the thrift store, I love thrifting. I mean, it's just a high passion of mine. Getting anything secondhand, really huge passion.
Same.
Love a good garage sale. I love antiquing. I love vintage shopping. I love going to thrift stores. And now we're at this time where there's even apps for that. If there's not something close by where you live, dependent where you are in the world, you could go on OfferUp, you could go on Mercari, Poshmark, whatever, to get things that are at a reduced rate. And there's even, websites now that are reselling their old other garments, or people are reselling their garments, and you can go get clothing for a good deal. I know, as a mother, our babies grow through clothing so fast. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I've had to really like reflect on like what is truly necessary. We're not just going to do these one-off outfits. It has to be like these daily wears, right? And so oftentimes when you're supporting, this more regenerative slow fashion, I mean, it's so expensive, but these babies are growing so fast. My
Hmm.
mind's always like, okay, I'm saving it for the next kid. But there are these websites, or I don't have a Facebook, but I know, and this is something I've always felt left out, is Facebook Marketplace, or like I know there's little Facebook groups and people are reselling the clothing. And so it can be accessible, but you just have to take your time to find it.
Hmm.
And in that process, I think it's really fun. I mean, it's such a blast
It
finding.
is. It's like a scavenger hunt, kind of.
Yes, and then yeah, I just have so much fun with it. But when I'm at the thrift store, I always run my hand down the garment. So the first thing I do is feel it. I can always feel, and once you become attuned to it all, and you have built your natural fiber wardrobe, and you just know the feel of things by your hand. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I have to check this one. I'm on, you can tell, like, especially if something's like really, if it's
A little
not
too
like,
soft.
yeah, a little too soft, and it's a certain kind of sweater, and it's not like alpaca or wool or something. You're like, why is
Hmm.
this so soft? Oh,
Hmm.
acrylic.
It's not cashmere.
Yeah. So, yeah, my prayer, my hope is through conversations like this, people really start to wake up and go, okay, I want to start supporting regenerative and slow fashion. And we can really begin to make it a movement. And I feel like in kind of communities of people that you and I both are in or hang out with, it is something that people are aware of, and conversations that we're having. And yeah, so most of my friends are very aware of this and really gravitate towards, like, we're always on the hunt for our natural fiber clothing and supporting good companies. And so, yeah, just I feel like once we start talking about it more, like kind of more broadly, then people will stop and think, because I feel like a lot of people are passionate too about, how can we create less harm to the earth, less harm to ourselves, each other. And this is a huge way, right? Like, people are really passionate about social justice issues. I'll just give an example of that. But then some people are not bringing that awareness to their own clothing. So they might be like super passionate about these things, but then it's like it really starts with everything that you're supporting, everything you're buying. Like you said, you vote with your dollar. So I hope this can really plant the seed in some people's minds who might have not had that awareness to begin to choose a different way, because we really do have to make it a part of our culture. And once it becomes
Hmm.
a part of our culture, like that's just becomes the norm. So we can shift it. And that's the thing about culture, is it's always changing over time. So yeah, if we make a movement that values high quality and long lasting garments made ethically and sustainably, often with natural organic materials, and ideally from regenerating farms, right? Because you have to really look at the way a lot of the natural fibers are farmed and look
Yeah.
more deeply into that too. And we really want to support companies. And I know of one, and well, there's more than one, but off the top of my head, Christy Dawn has a regenerative farm. They have this model of like being farm to closet. And I had just
Yeah.
listened to some conversations with them, and they talked about how they started regenerating some land in India. And because they
Hmm.
really wanted like the art of the block printing and the natural dye and kind of that way. And there was somebody out there who could manage the land, and they can help regenerate the soil, right? Make the soil healthy again, instead of
Yeah.
like using these GMO seeds and all these pesticides that just kill and deplete the nutrients in soil, which makes it dead soil, which is a huge cause of, in our history, the Dust Bowl, like in American history, right? Like when you over farm and leach nutrients out, it just becomes this dead, not living thing. And so when we regenerate, we bring back biodiversity and we bring back the abundance, and then everything grown is holding the energy of the land. So you feel it when
Hmm.
you adorn yourself in these fibers. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm really inspired by what Christy Dawn is doing as well. I wish I could be, and maybe that's a goal for me someday, but I think what they're doing is amazing. Just teaming up with a farm and really just taking responsibility for the land in such a big way. Yeah, I really, really see what they're doing, and I think it's incredible. And I hope more brands on that scale will follow suit. And I hope someday I'll be able to get there as well, because I would love to be working with a farm like that and taking responsibility for the land into my own hands in that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's really powerful. I also too just want to speak to just like the longevity of clothing. And I feel like that's something I hear a lot, that term with slow fashion. It's like, oh, this is the longevity of this piece. It's going to be so much longer. And in a lot of ways, yes, it will, because it's probably made better. It's probably made in a more conscious, loving way. And the attention to the stitches is greater, which will allow that garment to last longer. But in a lot of ways, no, I don't want it to last that long. I want it to decompose and become back to the earth. Like if you have a t-shirt for so many years, you want to get a good amount of wear out of it. But eventually I want to see that fiber start to break down, and compost, because or else this clothing, like I said, is just going to be sitting in landfills for the rest of eternity. Like polyester clothing is going to last longer than your slow fashion t-shirt. Just because the fiber is plastic and it doesn't break down. So I definitely see it in like my yoga clothes all the time. I have some synthetic yoga pants and I have some cotton yoga pants that I use a lot. And I can see the difference over many years. Like my cotton ones are getting thinner and they're like starting to, lose their stretch a little bit. And the synthetic ones are still going strong.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of ways, that can be good as a consumer. But in the like longevity of their like earth, I don't want my clothing to last forever. I want it to last for its lifespan and I want to wear the crap out of it, and have an amazing and like really get the use out of the item that I purchased. But I want that item to eventually, biodegrade and return to the soil. So I just want to mention that too.
I love that way of thinking. I feel like my mind's always been like, oh, these long lasting pieces. But then I do a lot of my natural fiber clothing starts to have the wear and then it starts to get like the see-through little spots in places. Do you know what I'm talking
Uh-huh.
about?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no. But then I think, well, I've had these for a long time. I've worn these a lot, so they're wearing down. But my brain is always like, no, I have to. But now I'm thinking differently now that you shared that, where it's like, that's actually a good thing. It is
Hmm.
breaking down. It has been so worn, and it's okay for it to have a life cycle. And as
Hmm.
long as it can biodegrade, that's not
Hmm.
causing the same harm as something just ending up in the landfill.
Exactly. Like we want our clothing to eventually become the soil again and go back to the earth and continue the cycle of evolution. And yeah, I think that's one thing I always hear. It's just like, oh, well, I'm going to buy this piece of clothing and it's going to last me my lifetime. And yes, I really hope that it does. And I think in many cases, if you buy a beautiful dress, and you take really good care of it, it will last a really long time and it will become an heirloom piece, but eventually when that piece of clothing has been loved and worn by yourself and maybe your daughter and maybe their daughter, like eventually that piece of clothing is going to go back to the earth in a good way. And it's not going to be here beyond generations and generations and generations, just like never decomposing and sitting in a pile of trash in a different country, where it's just escalating and becoming more of the problem.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's like, we don't have all this space, right? Landfill, garbage. This is a huge new age problem, right? Because this wasn't even an issue, like as big as an issue as it is now a few generations ago. So it's like really rapid that we've been consuming how we're consuming. It's all like a reflection and a mirror of each other, right? Everything's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like processed foods, right? Easy, fast, cheap. It's like this easy,
Mm-hmm.
fast, cheap mirror and so much of what's permeating through society. And we really have to take a step back and go back and slow down. Go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I want to slow, I don't want to I don't want to support this company that's like busting out all these hamburgers and like it's barely even meat. It's like, and the animals are treated horribly and it's just like tragic all the way around. It's like, I want to support this
Mm-hmm.
farm that's regenerating and sequestering carbon. And yeah, we buy a whole
Mm-hmm.
cow and put it in our freezer. So we have the same cow we are consuming for like 2 years. It
Mm-hmm.
sustains our family. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, we have to
Yeah.
start kind of thinking about those choices definitely when it comes to our clothing and not contribute to the problem And I love that you're really thinking about this with your own company and being so mindful with how you are putting things out there for people. And really, your clothing is just beyond gorgeous. People do stop me on the street all the time, like I had mentioned to you, and ask me what I'm wearing. And I always pass your info on. And I'm
Thank
curious
you.
too, like, what are some of your favorite companies to support, or say favorite makers to support? I would love to hear that from you.
Well, obviously, Sparrow Co.
Number one.
I definitely wear a lot of my clothing because I love it, and I design it to be functional and good for this season of life and many other seasons of life. And it really, I feel like I can move freely in it and be comfortable and also wash it. So yeah, I try to design clothing for everyday life. And my teacher always said, don't make clothes that you can't wipe your hands on. So I really like to keep that model with my clothing. But some other brands that I like to support are Baba, which is this sweater I'm wearing. And I've recommended them on my feed before because they're just like this incredible sweater brand out of Spain. And they work with local farmers and shepherds to harvest the wool in really, really good ways. And every time I unbox, I usually treat myself during their Black Friday sale. I'll treat myself to a sweater, and it's literally my second skin like the entire winter. I don't take it off. And I love unboxing their sweaters because I can just smell the farm. And sometimes you can see like little pieces of hay still woven into the sweater, and I just love the feeling of that so much. I love finding my teacher's clothing. Jean, I'm wearing one of her shirts right now. I love finding her vintage linen pieces in the wild. Her brand is called Flax, and she has these really sweet little affirmations always sewn into her clothing, which are really positive and uplifting and just remind me of her. So I really love wearing her clothing. And beyond that, I really love what Christy Dawn is doing. I really look up to them as a company and just think they're amazing in so many ways. So I have like a couple of their dresses that I just absolutely cherish and love, and they're definitely very special pieces. So I wear them on special occasions. And one more brand that I do really love is Rudy Jude. I don't know if you've heard of her brand before, but I grew up in Maine, and she is from the same area that I grew up in. And she's created this really lovely slow fashion brand focused on more workwear styles, and all of her clothing is naturally dyed, which I find amazing at the scale that she's at. So yeah, I like to support those brands.
Love those brands. Really, I really want to get some. I saw you post about the Baba sweaters, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get some of these. I started looking into the company because it's always really nice to hear about brands that people you respect and admire, and how they're thoughtful about their clothing, what they like. And people are always asking me, what's your list? What's the list of all the companies that you love to support? And so for me, of course, Sparrow Company, I always tell them your name. I really love Bohemian Folk Company. Yeah, very similar. Like
Leslie.
Yeah, Leslie's amazing and very similar to you in how she, creates designs and then works with other like seamstresses or artisans in other countries and creates these amazing partnerships. I love Uma Pluma. Do you know them?
Oh, yeah.
In Oregon?
Yeah.
It's a very small company as well. You can get their stuff on Etsy. So they sell it online through Etsy, and they have a store in Oregon and Portland area.
Nice.
One of my favorites too is for myself and my daughter. I have a lot of their pieces is the Simple Folk Company. So they get their clothes made in Portugal mostly. And all natural fibered stuff, very beautiful pieces that really last a long time. Like they feel really durable. And some of it even has like almost that fit feel, because the thing is when you're supporting natural fibered things, it doesn't carry that softness like a synthetic fiber, dependent what it is, right? If it's, from wool or whatnot, and how processed the wool is. But their company has these amazing sweaters or alpaca sweaters, and they just feel so cozy. And they're just so cozy. So it feels almost like that softness, that plushness that people are drawn to. So I
Mhm.
really, really love Simple Folk Company.
Mm.
And yeah, do you ever buy them or do you know what it?
I've heard of them. I don't own any. I think I might have bought in a couple of things for Lyra from them before, but I don't personally have any of their clothes for me.
Yeah, they're
But I
great.
like I've seen their style before. It looks, yeah, really sweet.
Yeah, they're amazing. And then one of my favorites, and I have literally 9 pairs of the same style. They're all in different colors though. And it's Gaia Conception.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
they're really cool. It's almost overwhelming when you go to their website because they have so many different styles of clothing. And what's really cool is being able to pick the fabric. So it's like, oh, an organic hemp blend or just the organic cotton or whatever. So you can pick the weight of the style of garment and then you can pick the color.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's so much they can do. And they just have some seamstresses working in the East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really love their pieces and really love this particular pair of pants. I just think it fits so well. They're very timeless. They're very comfortable. Like I literally have not worn a pair of jeans minus like my baggy jean overalls from Simple Folk Company. But I haven't worn a pair of jeans in seriously over a decade. I honestly cannot remember. Maybe I was in college is the last time I wore a pair of jeans. Not that I don't like I'm against jeans or anything, but once you start wearing more comfortable pants, like
Mhm.
in clothing, I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I can't wear that. I can't like go button up and like, yeah, I like having like a flowy thing that just kind of
Mhm.
fits to the body nicely with a band.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm such a jeans girl, though.
Yeah, jeans are so
I love my
beautiful.
jeans.
Yeah,
But they
and
have to be
then
comfy.
some other companies I really like for baby clothes and mama clothes is Beachwood Baby. They have really good linen pieces. So I really love that company for mama baby. And then do you have some favorite ones that you like for Lyra, your daughter? Like I do like make organics or colored organics and
Mhm.
Simple Folk are probably my favorite. I do buy some Kate Quinn stuff. It's more like at an accessible price. She used to sell to like boutiques and then
Mhm.
she realized like that wasn't a good model. So she just sells them all online and they're for a decent price. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm extending my line into kids' clothes now more so. So I've actually been
Yes.
making Lyra a lot of clothes because I've been just sampling things and trying to figure out different styles. So I've been making a lot of things for Lyra lately. And I did splurge on a really, really nice jacket for her this winter. It was by the brand like Siskin, Siskin.
Oh,
They were,
yeah.
yeah, they're on the website Mama Owl. And I just couldn't resist. It was so beautiful. It was like this gorgeous wool jacket because it's really hard to find nice warm jackets for kids that are natural fibers. And she's also very sensitive to like
Mm-hmm.
itchiness. And this jacket she actually really likes. So I got her that jacket from that company and I really love it. And I hope she'll get another year out of it. And other than that, when it comes to shopping for Lyra, there's this amazing kids consignment store in our area that I go to, and I'm not really looking so much at the brands, but just for good natural fiber clothing that's cute that she'll actually
Totally.
wear because I feel like she's at the age now where she's very particular about her style.
Oh, that's so cute.
And not everything flies like it used to. So I
Don't
don't
you
know.
miss those days?
I mean, the other day she insisted on leaving the house wearing a pair of pants with underwear over it. And it was just like there's no talking her out of it. So that was that.
Well, she knows what
So
she
just
wants.
trying to be more accommodating to her evolving sense of style and what she wants to wear
It can be
because I don't
really
really have
hard.
limited style.
As a mom, I notice within myself, this is why I always try to provide things that are aesthetically pleasing for her and not
Mhm.
let like
Mhm.
these, like the unicorn t shirt or whatever, into the wardrobe. So then she's only choosing things that are kind of curated by me. But
Mhm.
even so, like she has this pair of like bright red socks and she will want to like wear the red socks. And I'm like, honey, it doesn't go with your outfit. The coloring, let's look at the coloring. And I'm trying to show her like colors and like we need to be like, thinking about these things aesthetically. But I'm like, okay, why am I trying to control? like, okay, you can wear the socks. Like I actually just get over myself or I want her to like look a particular way and have this particular sense of style about her. But it's like, who am I to choose her sense of style? Like she has to develop that herself. So I have found myself like having to release control of that in ways where I'm like, oh, you want to wear the tie dye shirt? Are you sure you want to wear the tie dye shirt? But, anyways, I love that you are making clothes for Lyra and the fact that, so I got clothes from you at Spirit Weavers last year, baby clothes for
Oh,
Sequoia.
yeah.
And she still fits into those bright pink pants. Like,
Oh,
you
the
know how we
pants.
got the matching outfits for the wedding that we attended?
Mhm.
And she still rocks those bright pink pants. And we have another pair of your pants in the lineup, but she's not quite big enough for them yet because I bought a
Okay.
couple pairs. But I think they're just so great. And they're very much like the pants that I wear and I have. They're so cute. So I love those. And I highly suggest you continue making that style because I feel like those are just amazing and very comfortable for babies and yeah, aesthetically pleasing for mamas.
It's so funny. It's just funny too, being in sort of this Waldorf aesthetic, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all the moms struggle with this as well. Just the balance of,
Releasing control.
a toddler wanting to express themselves and then just the mom wanting to, have things be curated a certain way. So
Mm-hmm.
we're
For
all in it
sure.
together.
So I love our local consignment store too. It's one of my favorite places to go. And what's so nice about consignment stores is you can trade, right? I trade a
Mhm.
lot of clothes that I'm not going to carry with me to the next baby. Like, I try to be mindful about what I'm stocking up and also, can't predict the gender of the next baby, might not have a girl but I'm still holding on to certain things. And if I don't end up having another little girl, then I will get rid of these other pieces. But
Mhm.
I love that I can trade with them. So I'll often just bring in, and they just started taking women's clothes too. So I can bring in some of my other clothes and start trading and getting store
Yeah.
credit and
Mhm.
finding really great pieces, natural fibered pieces at this local consignment. And the one here where I live is called Moonchild in
Mhm.
Olympia, and they're amazing.
Oh,
So they
nice.
have a lot of good clothing. Like they will carry like, Simple Folk randomly or like the colored organics or, they're really mindful with how they create the pieces they take in. So yeah,
Well,
if
that's
you
part of the thing about like recirculating fashion and keeping things into circulation. And also, it just goes to show that even if you're going to invest in a new piece of clothing from a slow fashion brand that might be a little bit more expensive, that piece of clothing is going to hold its value,
Mhm.
way longer. So if you buy something from a brand that's just known to be poor quality, fast fashion, you might have spent less money on it, but you're not going to get any money back from that. So it's kind of like an investment, like if you're buying something like that, you're investing into it. You get to enjoy having a nice quality, beautiful piece of clothing. And when you're done with it, like a kid grows out of it after 6 months or to a year, or mama, wants to shift up her style a little bit, like it's so much easier to keep these pieces in circulation for so much longer and, continue to make some of your money back from it as well, which is just like such a perk.
Totally. Yeah. And you can like even take your time to resell on like OfferUp or Poshmark or
Mhm.
something, Murray Curry.
I never heard of that one, Marie Curie.
Yeah, I think I'm saying it right, but it might be wrong. But like they're really great. I found,
Okay.
good pairs of old shoes or, you could find like barefoot shoes for kids
Oh,
on
nice.
there and just like kind of search
Oh,
what you're
good.
looking for. And I find it to be the best app one that I've yet to,
Oh, wow.
discover, like better than Poshmark or anything like that. So
I'm
next to
such a
going,
Depop person. Do you go in Depop?
no, is that an app
Oh,
too?
Depop is like my favorite by far.
Okay, I will have to write that down.
It's
Depop.
amazing.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
cool.
that's one that I love, but I'll have to definitely check out the one that you recommended as well. Never
Yeah.
heard of that one.
Ooh, so much fun to find like good deals.
Yeah.
Like a hot deal makes me so excited. My husband and I always joke because he's like, it's like you're high from the feeling. And I literally am. Like, I have called him before and I'm like, honey, I just found this amazing garage sale and got all these deals. And he's like,
Mhm.
whoa, slow down. But I'm like, heart's racing, so excited. It's like an adrenaline rush to
Mhm.
find just high quality, good old hand me down pieces of any sort, whether that be
Mhm.
furniture, art, clothing, jewelry, all that jazz.
Oh, yeah, I'm all about it for sure. All about it.
So I'm curious, how do you see clothing as a form of medicine and storytelling and ritual?
Mhm. Wow, that's such a beautiful question. Well, I think it like kind of goes back to just what we've been talking about with like the vibration of a garment, you know? And I always think when I make clothing, I want to make a piece of clothing that holds a really beautiful vibration. And that comes in the form of every step of the process, buying amazing fabric, cutting it, sewing it lovingly, dyeing it with intentional colors, and then, hand shipping them all, and then spritzing it maybe with a little Palo Santo spray at the end or something, blessing it up because I want the clothing to like hold the vibration of the world. I want to see it out there in the world and I want people to feel that. And yeah, I think when you're wearing clothing that holds that vibration, just naturally you attune to it. And I think you are lifted up into a higher place from there. So, I mean, I feel like we adorn, like, just like through like life and, and millennia, like we have been adorning ourselves with like beautiful fashions and beautiful jewelry to achieve higher spirituality. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but like we've been adorning ourselves to bring ourselves closer to the gods, in godliness. And I think that's just so ingrained in us, especially like femininity and like womanhood. I think that's just so deeply ancestrally ingrained into who we are as like women that we want to feel that way, and we want to adorn ourselves. We want to look beautiful. We want to mirror our higher selves and come into the people that we want to see in the world. So clothing is such a integral part of that process. And it's such a huge part in that becoming of who we want to be. So yeah, I just see it as like we're kind of like wearing these costumes, It's not Halloween, but we're waking up and we're putting on costumes. And it's like we perceive each other without realizing, whether we realize it or not, we're looking at each other, we're noticing what each other is wearing. And I think when we adorn ourselves in these high vibrational pieces of clothing, I think naturally we're just lifting ourselves up to that level of being perceived and also just internally like feeling like a vibrational match to what we're wearing. And I think that helps us to feel more confident. It helps us to make maybe better decisions in life. It helps us to, align with our higher self and our truth and make those steps in our life. I think it's just a lot of these things can be perceived as so subtle, but also I think it's so much deeper and bigger than we give it credit for. So like we might think that, oh, she only cares about wearing this certain thing, like that's so superficial, but I think it's really not. Like I think when we're really taking the time to consciously choose how we adorn ourselves, we're really more so attuning into who we really want to be and who we want to show up in the world as, in like a really deep sense, actually.
So true. It's really an art. And that's where I've really had to be gentle with myself about maybe judging the superficial aspects of like, why do I want to like have these things? Or why do I feel like I need these things? And then reminding myself, well, this is a form of expression and
Mhm.
art, right? When you adorn yourself in beautiful handmade clothing, beautiful jewelry. And like you said, you're carrying like the energy of that in a space and really feeling into your divinity. It's, yeah, just overall, I don't know, it makes me feel just really good about myself and
Mhm.
have a higher self esteem, which is really important too, right? On an
Mhm.
interpersonal level, I think it's so much deeper, like you said, than what we really think of it as.
Mhm.
And yeah, our clothing, when it's made slow with care, like we've talked about, like, yeah, people can literally feel that in your energy. Your body can feel it. Your body's taking that energy, emitting that energy and bathing in it. So we really, yeah, we want our clothing to be medicine. And just like food is medicine, I believe clothing is medicine.
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
it's totally medicine because I mean, just beyond the like beauty and the sight of it, it's also totally just like nourishing our skin, and which is our biggest organ. on our body, it's like what we put on our body is skincare, you know? So adorning ourselves in these kind of fibers that naturally uplift our skin and nourish our skin, it like literally actually lifts the vibration of our bodies.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like, it's healthcare, right? It's taking our wellness into our own hands. And we want to do that completely. I hope everyone would wants to strive for that completely, to be really healthy in body, mind, spirit, and wearing these types of clothing really help boost that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had a beautiful vision. My mind's just going here where I was connecting with a plant medicine and I went into my closet, closed the door, and just sat in there and like went into a deep meditation. So I just like started meditating. And then I started feeling into how every piece of clothing was made. So I started feeling about like the many hands that helped bring the clothing to my closet.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like the pieces, I just started visualizing like all the different women, the farmers, the everything. And it was just like, it holds so much. Like there's so much there. And like you said, it's subtle, but when you start like tapping into it, it's really, there's something really big there. And so I'll never forget going into my closet and being like, whoa, I started visualizing all the people like sewing. And I have this amazing moon rising cape, and it was made by like Quechua women in the Peruvian Andes and then blessed by a maestro. And I just think about that sometimes, like that piece, like, wow, like these weavers just, you want your clothing to tell a story. It's really beautiful when clothes have a story behind it. I mean, all the clothes you make have a beautiful story behind it of how like your intention, what you're creating and your vision and you designing. And so it really tells these stories. And I think people are really called to certain stories. And that's why I really feel like people ask me where I get my clothes, because they can feel the stories and they can feel the energy and they can feel the care. It's different, right? And I feel like I'm also attracted to people who are wearing these natural high vibration fibers in clothing where I'm like, wow, I love that. I love that piece. And so anyway, thank you for the beautiful work you're doing for the world.
Aw, I love that you went into your closet and tuned in like that.
You'll have to do it. It
That's
was pretty
powerful.
magical. It was,
No,
it was
that's
a
really
powerful thing.
powerful,
Yeah.
and that you really felt that.
Yes, I
That's, like,
got a lot of
that's
downloads.
amazing. Wow. I mean, that's so real, like what you said about the amount of people and hands that garment has gone through to become a garment, it's really big, and it extends over so many different people and so many different places, and yeah, just to really see all those stories woven together. It's huge.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have some closing reflections for us as I notice we're coming up on time here. But what has been something that you've really learned about yourself through working with your clothing company, Sparrow Co?
Hmm. Learned about myself. Gosh, so many things. And I think as a big holistic vision of this, just what it means to run a business in a healthy way that's nurturing to all the people that are involved, including myself and my family. And also just how amazingly fulfilling it feels to feel like I'm helping others through my visions and my work and helping to uplift humanity in a good way, even though it might just be a small little cottage, offering. I think the people that get it and are out there uplifted by my work. And that's really deeply fulfilling for me. And also just holding this small flag of resistance to big fast fashion companies and just showing that there can be another way and it's possible. And through that, finding my soul tribe and the other people out there that really get it and appreciate this little act of resistance in the world. Because there's, with everything going on in the world, it's like we can't battle everything. We can't stand for everything. And if we do, our voice will become less potent. And so it's like we pick these small battles. And I think this is the small one that I'm choosing to fight for right now, creating conscious clothing, creating garments that uplift people spiritually and vibrationally, and doing it in a good way that honors the earth.
Yeah, I love it so much because that really what you were saying gave me a visual of this lesson I teach my students every year. I've been in the schools for quite a long time, and probably the last decade. This has been a lesson that I love doing with my students. So I teach upper elementary. They're typically in the early pubescent times,
Mm-hmm.
and I always have them generate issues that our communities are facing. Issues like in whether it's the wider community, neighborhood, school, them personally, what are issues in our community? And they'll just start generating ideas. And some of those might be like police brutality, drugs, crime. Like they're literally just thinking of everything impacting where they live. And I always work with kids that are high poverty in an urban school district in Tacoma. I drive quite a distance to get to where I work. And I really love working in this urban setting with these children that really, I think, deserve access to really high quality teachers and ways of being. And so anyways, that's a part of my devotion and my work. And
Thank you.
anyways, so we do this lesson. They're generating things. They're talking about, issues with health insurance. Oh, processed foods. Like they're putting anything they can think of impacting the world in not a good way. Racial injustices. So then what I have them do is they have all these ideas on the board. And then I said, okay, talk with your groups, try to then connect certain things. So then they'll connect like crime with like gangs or police brutality. So they'll start making little connections and they'll say, oh, processed foods is connected to sicknesses because processed foods are, so they'll start justifying. And at the end of the lesson, this is the power in it and why I thought of it, is they'll see that everything is interconnected. So when you choose to work for one issue, and that's the point of the lesson, when you choose to focus your time and your energy on one of these greater issues impacting our society, then you're impacting the whole in a better way. So like you said, like you're saying, this is my one small part. It's like that piece is huge because it's connected to every other issue we have, with the injustices to the earth and humanity. Yeah, you're doing a huge part. And so I want people to really believe in the power of whatever they choose to focus their energy on and know that that is doing more than enough.
Aw, that's sweet. And thank you for all that you do too. Teaching the kids and mentoring them in that way is huge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what do you hope for people feel when they wear your pieces?
I hope that they feel beautiful, and I hope that they feel comfortable, because I feel like when we feel comfortable, we're able to just use our full expression of our bodies easier. And I hope they feel confident. And I think that comes with feeling comfortable too, is we feel confident when clothes fit us well and they're not too constricting and they sit in a good way. I think that helps us to feel more confident. And yeah, that's really what I hope for in a simple way.
I love those hopes. And how can people support small makers like you or get involved in the slow fashion movement?
Yeah, just purchasing clothing from us. Straight up, because it's definitely like it's not that it's we're making clothing for you guys, and that's the best way that you can support small makers, is just by adorning yourselves in our creations and consciously making the effort to save up or buy something, or that helps keep us going. And like you do, Amber, just rocking the clothes out in the world and feeling beautiful and telling others where you got them when people ask, and spreading the word. Those are all amazing things and ways you can support the slow fashion movement, because we're really doing it for the people and the planet.
Thank you so much. And how can listeners find you? What's your website and how can people connect with you?
So I'm on Instagram, and you can find me at Sparrow, and then there's _co. So that's a great way to just initially connect. And if you find me through this podcast, please send me a message. I'd love to just say hi. And My website is www.shopsparrow.co. You can find me there. And also, I will be at Spirit Weavers this summer, both sessions. If any of the listeners are going to be there, definitely come say hi. I'd love to meet you guys all.
Exciting. I'm going to be at the Sun session, so I can't wait
Nice.
to see you there.
Are you going to be teaching again?
I am. Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely support Sparrow's company and you won't regret it. It feels really good too. Like I think about that. I was thinking about that yesterday on my drive, knowing we had this conversation today and going, I love that when I buy a piece from you, that goes to your family, that supports your family, your business. And I love being able to support people directly instead of supporting these like big companies. Like, I love being able to be like, that is helping sustain. And like, it's just, it feels really good. And so I hope people, and like you said, start to kind of save up and make an investment, right? These clothing, it's an investment. So we don't have to be so jumping onto all the next trends, but just really taking our time to pick pieces and curating our wardrobe that it feels good all the time. And we have these timeless pieces. And I would say your pieces are very timeless.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what my hope is, that just pieces that like will transition through all stages of womanhood, maiden, mother, crone. My mom wears a lot of my clothing and just transition seamlessly through the different stages. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. And I loved having this conversation.
Me too. I'm really appreciative. This was an edge for me to get on a podcast, but I just feel like this conversation we had is so important and so needed right now. So yeah, thanks for holding the space and platform for it. I really appreciate you, Amber.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for walking this path of holistic wellness and mindful living with me. I hope today's discussion planted seeds in the hearts of those that need it most and has inspired you in some way. If you found value in our conversation, please consider subscribing to the Sacred Rite Podcast and leaving a review. It really helps this podcast reach more listeners, and I would be so grateful. I would love to connect over social media. My Instagram handle is @sacred.rite. There you can stay up to date on upcoming episodes, current offerings, and small batch releases of our handmade botanical remedies. I will leave any relevant links from today's episode in the show notes. The music in this podcast is from an incredible musician and a dear sister of mine, Satori Key. Be sure to check out her music on all major platforms. Her medicine music is transformative and deeply healing and has truly changed my life. Tune in next time. Until then, nurture your body and soul, and remember, it's your sacred right.